Hey everyone, it's Sebastian Torres. The majority of my videos are centered around creating characters as opposed to creating the background. So in this video, I'm going to concentrate on making a background, specifically an anime style background. And then we may be able to actually animate it and put it into Vinci Resolve, put a character on top of it and see what it'll look like. Let's check this out. First thing we'll need is a checkpoint loader. The one that I like to use is actually the load checkpoint with noise select. The good thing with this one is it comes with templates for animating, so that'll come in handy later. Then what we're going to need is a couple of text encodes, so we're going to need our positive and our negative. Let's make this one green and red, just so it's easier to keep track of which one's which. Now we'll also need to create our case sampler. I'm going to use the basic one for now. We can use the advanced one if we want, but it's not entirely necessary. And we're going to need our VAE decode, and we're going to send our latent into that. Connect our positive and negative. And we're going to need to save this image. If you don't have a save image and you create an image that you like, you forget to save the workflow, you've lost it. So I've done that quite a few times. It's better just to actually have that. Now what we're going to need is an actual latent. So we're going to go with an empty latent. Now this is just noise. It's not actually an image. So what I'm going to do is 1536 by 512 and leave it at 1. This is just going to give us one image. Don't worry about it being 1536. Because it's 512, it actually goes quite fast. From there, what we're going to need is we're going to need an NN latent upscaler, and we're going to set that to 1.5 and leave it at, let's put that at 2. This way it's going to double what we have here. Now back here in our checkpoint loader, what I forgot is I'm going to be using the Anime Stills V1. You can use anything you want really, but when it comes to anime, I prefer this one. Now, our latent, we're going to send that over to a new case sampler, and we're going to connect all the pipes. Don't forget our model. Okay, and then we're going to set VAE decode. Connect that up there and do another image save. Okay, so now that we've got our basic layout, let's go in here and set this to fixed, and we can choose any number we want really. We'll just stick to 1 and then we'll stick to 2 in this one. Just need something a little bit different. We'll set this to 50, 5, and then you can pick any of these you want. Just go through them and see which one gives you the results that you're after. I'm going to go with the 2M and set that to Keras. Leave this at 1 because we're creating a brand new image. And with the second one, we'll set this to 30. You can leave it at 20 if you like. And we'll go with 5 as our CFG. And I like to pick the same sampler, same scheduler, and with this one we're going to set this down to 0.5. You can actually go 0.45, that way it doesn't change too many details in the original image. And once we've got that, we'll actually need our positive and negative prompt. And so what I'll do is grass, field, trees, blue sky, clouds. And what I'll do is with the blue sky and clouds, if I don't do control down a few and actually lower the intensity of it, the blue sky and the clouds tend to blow out the image for some reason. It it washes out the colors basically. And so here what we're going to do is this way it keeps it in that cartoon sort of space. We can also come in here and write the word anime. That way it'll keep the style. The only problem with this word is that it's actually going to generate a person, and sometimes we don't want that, but we'll test it out, and if we have to, we'll take it out of there. So let's check that out. So as you can see, as I'm recording this, it's actually working pretty quickly. got a lot of details, which is great. It's exactly what we want. And as you can see, the actual sky isn't blowing everything out. It's still got a nice amount of detail. If we had left it at full strength, you would have seen that it actually takes over the entire image. So it's kind of like a bluish hue to it, and we don't want that. This one's actually doubling the size of the image, so it is going to be rather large. And it may take a little bit of time. But the good thing about it is, if we have a really large image, we're able to actually scroll through the image in post and not lose any of that detail. Let's see what it gives us. That is beautiful. So let's put them side by side. As you can see, with this one, it might get eaten away with the YouTube compression, but you can see that there's a lot of pixelation in the clouds and also the trees. Actually, there's pixelation pretty much everywhere. But as you can see, this looks like it's painted. It doesn't have that sort of pixelation, but it is quite a bit larger in an image, which is fine. It's exactly what we need. Now, the only thing is, if we're going to animate this in ComfyUI, we don't want it to be that large because it's actually pretty huge. So what is it? Let's see. It's around 3,000, a little bit over 3,000 pixels by 1024. So if we try and do an animation with that, it's gonna go crazy. I'd like to thank my Patreons for making these videos possible. If you haven't checked out my Patreon yet, there's quite a few perks in there, including tutorials that don't make it onto YouTube for whatever reason. Maybe they're a bit too long, maybe they're not sexy enough for YouTube. And some of these YouTube videos, I've actually got extended versions of these on my Patreon. That way you actually learn quite a bit more. I know a lot of people have been saying that perhaps I go through these tutorials way too fast. And so on my Patreon, I go a little bit slower, I go a little bit more in depth, and that way you guys can learn a little bit more. Pretty much all of my ComfyUI workflows end up on there. That way you guys can play around with it and learn as you go along. And once again, thank you to my Patreons. You guys made this possible. Now that we've got the image that we need, what I'm going to do is, I got rid of our empty latent. We don't need that anymore. So what we have here is the image that we created. I'm repeating it 16 times because obviously we need 16 frames, and I'm going to feed that into our VAE encode, and that's going to go into our first latent. So that's our first K-sampler right here. Okay, I'm going to put this over here so it's a little bit easier to understand. And what I've also created here is I've got our the only control net that we actually need. So we're going to need control GIF. So if you've been following my videos up until now, you'll see that I use this quite a bit. I'm using an advanced control net, and I'm feeding my prompts into that. I'm also feeding this image into it. That's why I've got 16 images. And what I've done is I've actually come into, I've copied this into here, and I've gone into our mask editor, and I've painted over the bits that I don't want it to edit, basically. So I save that, and it's just giving me this bottom bit, and I've used that mask for the control net. The reason I've used that mask for the control net is I need this to animate the bits that I needed to animate only. So I want it to have more motion in that small section at the bottom. And that way I've fed that into both my first and second K samplers. So the positive and negative go into first and second K samplers. With the Animatediff, what I've done is I've gone with the V3 SD15mm as the model. And what else did I change? Okay, so the motion scale I did 1.125, just so it gives it a little bit of motion, but I've tried it a couple of different times, and if you go too high, it goes crazy. If you go too low, it does absolutely nothing. So everything else is pretty much the same. I left it at 1.5 actually when it comes to the upscaling. I was going to do it a little bit smaller, but I figured what's the point in that? And so with the second, I've actually turned it down to 15 steps, 3.5 CFG. and the denoise to 0.45. Now the reason I did this is purely because I don't want it to change too much of this image. I just needed to have the animation that I've added in this and just upscale it. Screenshot that and see how you go. And that's perfect. Now let's go into DaVinci Resolve. We'll go to the project settings, format, and we'll change this to HD. We don't need 4K for this. Leave it at 24 frames a second, and we'll create that. And the first thing we'll do is we'll drop in this version. So it's rather fast moving. We can zoom in here. Now the beauty of this is because we do have such a wide frame, it actually gives us the ability to do panning, which is quite common in animation. But I'm not actually going to do it with that. What I'm going to show you is another way to do it. So let's say I want that. Now the good thing is that the other thing we can do is actually bring in just a still image. And use that instead. So all we need to do is crop the bottom again. Soften. Then we'll bring back this. Because we're going to actually animate it from side to side, we don't need the rest of it to be animated. So it gives us a little bit of motion in the background. We don't need it to be all in motion. Again, if you're doing this sort of grass bit down the bottom, you can also do the trees. So you can mask the trees if you want, one by one, and actually get those to move specifically how you want them. And in the next video, I'm actually going to show you how to create a motion LoRa for specific things. So if you needed to make a motion LoRa for moving branches or moving leaves, then you can do that as well and use that with your Animatediff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this character in here now. And this should be sufficiently slow enough. Yep, there's a slight glitch in the walk there, but I'm actually happy with the way that looks. And we can get rid of that last one. Perfect. So now we just need to fix the background. So let's separate this. And this is why I didn't want you to change the actual shape of it yet. We'll go to adjustment clip. Drop it over here, and then we'll go to filters, transform, and then we can actually adjust it through the transform. Let's zoom in there. I'm not going to go with a ultra widescreen look for this. Let's just go standard. And okay. Then we can just animate it and add a little bit of motion blur. Go to the end. Just move this across. And before we do the green screen, we can just see what the timing looks like. Is it moving too fast? Let's see what happens if we slow it down just a touch. We'll go with maybe 12 frames a second. And then we can actually send this into Fusion. Okay, so now it's going to give us a little bit of trouble because we need a background first. So that can be our foreground, and our background we'll have to make it the exact same color. Change change this to, no, it's perfect. Just need the color. So pick it. Go into our delta keyer. Let me just pick it off the screen. That's perfect. Let's go to our matte. It's usually pretty decent, but just to make sure, as you can see, certain things tend to glitch. I'm not going to go fixing it frame by frame with this one. It's just for a tutorial. But that works. Give it a slight blur. Okay, cool. Final result. That's perfect. It's got a little bit of a glitch here, and also in the shorts for some reason when it passes, when a hand passes, just need to make the butt rounded. But I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. Let's go into our coloring and just match the colors a little bit because it doesn't look the best. The background seems to be a little bit more saturated, so let's give it a little bit more saturation here. And just a little bit of green tinge. Beautiful. Okay, and the other thing we can do, now that I think about it, and so what I've done is I've actually created a second media out, and I've got a merge node after the delta with a white background and just a mask or a rectangle that cuts out the white background, and I'll show you what that gives us. So then that way I've got this. I use a luma keyer to cut that out, so it's just got the bottom, and I'm going to use that as my alpha. So if we go into our color and we add a new source, you're going to see that this one's actually media 2. Well, let's do Alt S and we'll pump that through here. Add alpha output. And then that way we've just got the grass. Now, why all this effort just for the grass, you might ask? Well, it's because I want to put it over her. Cool. And now we're just going to have to go into our transform and actually animate her moving across the frame. Let's start her here, create some keyframes. And also in the motion blur, let's bring that halfway up just so it's not so jaggedy. And once we get to the end, we'll bring her across. And now we've got to check out our timing. Yeah, that's not bad. Cool. All right. So now that we've got that, and so now it looks like she's walking in the actual grass. We'll slow her down a little bit. Keep her right in the center of the frame. Beautiful. And now we can add a little bit of camera shake on top of everything, just so it looks a little bit more legit and not so stagnant. Okay, let's go to 0.07 again. Let's see what that looks like. Beautiful. And let's give this a little bit of blur. Just a little bit of lens blur. Not too much. Don't want to go crazy on it. Just to separate it a little bit. Because then we can also come into this one, go over here and add a little bit of a glow. Alright guys, let me know in the comments down below, what do you think? Are you going to be able to use this in your workflow? There's a lot you can actually do with this. In the next episode, I'm actually going to show you how I created this character. As opposed to using control nets, I created this using motion lures, and I'm really happy with the results that I'm getting with it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions, and also click like, subscribe, and check out this next video.